All right, welcome back to Iowa Bourbon Bracket, my quest to find my favorite Iowa-based bourbon. Have another awesome guest here lined up. This is Chris Diebel, founding partner of Bubba Southern Restaurant in downtown Des Moines. Um, Love Bubba, but what really got my eye and wanted me to get you on this segment here is your segments on the Bubba social media of Whiskey Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. How did the Whiskey Wednesday segments come about?
Whiskey Wednesdays came about pre-pandemic. We were doing Facebook Lives, and Facebook was rewarding those who went live with their other algorithm posts. Of course, our marketing team was like, if we're going to promote our weekly features, we need some live every week. And we were, for about 2 years, every single week going live and creating new cocktails for the feature card. And it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. So post-pandemic, now that going live isn't as special as it once used to be, we now do more little history tidbits on brands, and that's been a really fun pivot.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's really educational, informative, especially if you're just getting into whiskey or if you have been into whiskey to like learn some of the things about it. On one of your recent ones, you talked about you teamed up with the foundry here in town to make your own bourbon.
We did. It was a 4-grain, and we used sorghum in the mash bill. I'm originally Southern, and sorghum is a big part of Southern diets, and I thought it would be very fun to incorporate that into the mash bill, and it certainly adds a sweetness to it. And it was a fun experiment. It was a blast working with those
guys. How did that, explain kind of that whole process? Like, you decide, settle on the mash bill, you work with them, kind of how'd that all go?
Well, that team is awesome. They're so much fun just to go hang out with and brainstorm. So I came with the general idea, and then they came back with ideas on the exact mash bill that they wanted. I have learned over the years from my personal palate, I don't want probably more than 8% malted barley in something for my palate. So I knew that going in, that I wanted to keep the barley on the lower level. And then much like you might see wheat mixed into the mash bill, we knew that sorghum we wanted in there. It was going to be sweet and it was going to have a mellowing effect, but we didn't want it to overpower. So it was a fun back and forth.
Where do they age? Do they age that right there on site?
They do.
Very cool. And it's called Houndstooth and not available right now, right? You guys are sold out of it?
We have a little bit left in-house. We're not selling bottles of it, but we have it in-house for at least probably another 6 months, I would say. And then when it's gone, it's gone.
Very cool. Let's give this this first one a taste. This is number 5, I think, here. See what you think.
My surprise here is I thought, based on the nose, this was going to be a lot more smooth. I'm getting a lot more white pepper and wood on the palate than I thought I was going to get based on the nose.
Yeah.
The nose, I was like, oh, this is going to be sweet. And it's not sweet.
Yeah, it does kind of, you bring it up to your mouth and you're expecting one thing and it kind of hits you with a surprise. It's a little spicy, I think.
It is spicy.
Yeah. But not I like it, but it's probably not something I would go to like weekly, but maybe every now and then if I think it'd be really good in some cocktails too.
I was going to say it could benefit from a rock to balance out some of that spiciness, but I also think if you wanted to have a nice counter to a Manhattan, something like this spicy could balance the sweetness of a Manhattan pretty nicely.
Definitely. Yeah. So tell us what's new at Bubba. What's how's things going at the restaurant?
Things are great. Bubba is going to turn 9 this summer, which is kind of hard to fathom. So we're going through all of that. We're starting to get into the event game a little bit. We were doing quarterly dinners and stuff like that pre-pandemic, and we feel like we're just back now, and we can start to do that again. So happy to say we've got our first bourbon tasting event coming up soon. It's sold out, so that's great. It means there's demand for it, and we'll be doing more.
I feel like bourbon really, speaking of pandemic stuff, bourbon really took off during the pandemic, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, it did.
I mean, you see, it became harder to find. I think a lot of the distilleries are really ramping up production. It'll be interesting to see if there is a kind of swell the other way now, if it's hit its peak and going the other way.
We're at the point where, quite frankly, there's a lot of just mid stuff out there. And frankly, a little pullback won't hurt anybody because the good stuff will still be here.
Oh, for sure. And one of the things that I do like about that, though, is you got some people experimenting with some really crazy ideas. I know we were talking a little bit. One of the things you want to do is try to do maybe get into some wine barrel type age stuff. A lot of people doing that. Some of my favorite stuff, port barrels, things like that. But yeah, just why not try it, right?
I want to play with. They've talked about finishing in stouts. They've talked about doing an extra toasted on the grain, so it has this dark chocolate espresso vibe. I want to play with some of that in the mash build the next time I create a barrel.
Yeah. So let's talk about playing with the menu at Bubba. What are some of the kind of things that you want to play with the menu there and maybe show off with some of the Southern vibe? Because you said you're from South. I actually grew up in the South too, North Florida area. So when that whole thing was coming about, I was super excited. Been there many times. I know my daughter goes there for like her prom dinners and things like that. Brunch, awesome. We can't go wrong with Southern South brunch. So what kind of things are we looking forward to, Bubba?
The core menu will always be there. The fried chicken, chicken fried steak, meatloaf, shrimp and grits. Those are sort of sacred cows. They're not going anywhere. But we do quarterly like to do seasonal tweaks. So we're getting into the summertime where people are starting to think about swimsuit weather, less about fried and gravy and more about salads and lighter things. So that's always a challenge with Southern food. But I think it's really fun to play that challenge out with the team. You can blacken a fish and do a really, really great like mango salsa that is truly Southern, Floridian, for instance, Gulf, and still play to those Southern notes. It doesn't all just have to be fried and, never going to be mad at a fried dish. But
I think I grew up on black and red fish. That was one of my favorite things to have.
Absolutely.
In fact, I spent 2 years in college down there. Every Sunday we'd go out to the Gulf side, fish, get redfish, trout. Seafood is a big part of Southern food, especially when you're in that Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina area.
Exactly. So that's what we'll do. And then, fall will be here before we know it. And it's back to sweater weather food.
Yeah. Shrimp and grits is always one of my favorites. But let's try this other one here and give it a try here. So we talk about approachable and another one. This one screams approachable to me.
So approachable, I'm afraid it might not hold up to a rock.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it might die on the rock a little bit. But I like that it's almost got a subtle citrus zest on the front side of it. The nose is beautiful. I could drink a lot of this.
Yeah, and I think that approachable. This is somebody was getting into the whiskey game. This is something I would give them as a first try. If I planned on really drowning my sorrows, this might be something that I go to. But I think, I don't know, I'm kind of leaning towards this second one, but
especially going into the summer, I like to drink kind of lighter things in the summer. I'm a human who burns hot.
Yeah.
And so, I don't want a super high proof in warm weather. I'm guessing that this is a little lower than that one, and we'll see, I guess. But no, this, especially going into summer, I feel like this is
I tend to like the high proof, but this one I think just for its overall approachability and they talk about beer having a crushability factor.
Yeah,
this whiskey has a crushability factor. So I'm going to move forward with number 6. Let's see what number 5 is. All right, so not moving on, and this is kind of a surprise. This is the Cedar Ridge Barrel Proof. This was one of the favorites, I think, going in. Nothing against it. It is a great whiskey, and I just think for what we're looking for this, we're going to move with the other one, and it is Steeple Ridge Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Coming in at, don't have my glasses on, but I can't see the proof point. But I would imagine it is a little bit less, but one Steeple Ridge does move on, Steeple Ridge Straight Bourbon. I'll be moving on to the final 4. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. It was a lot of fun. Stay tuned for the final 4 coming.